if you're a shortstop and you're going to go play this tournament over the weekend, how many outs are you going to make? 20? If you think your child is going to be this blue chip athlete, I would really want to focus on and hammer home the fundamentals. Now I think about a weekend spent where you're taking 100 ground balls, taking 10 minutes, talking about it. You go back out there, take another 50. We've taken about 200 ground balls in about 2.5, 3 hours. We've had some great conversations about the mechanics surrounding our approach. I feel like we're probably going to get a little more out of that.
What's up, guys? I am coming to you today from Dallas, Texas. I'm at the winter meetings, but I did not want to hold this episode back. So welcome to another episode of the Advocate Podcast, a place where you guys know that we explore the world of youth and travel baseball, helping players and parents navigate what can be an exciting journey, but oftentimes becomes an overwhelming one. I'm your host, Matt Hannaford, and joining us today is a name that you've all heard of. His name is Dallas Braden. He is a former major league pitcher for the Oakland A's. He is a current broadcaster, and he's a man whose name I would say is forever etched in baseball history. He is best known for his unforgettable, perfect game performance in 2010. Dallas's career, I will tell you, is a testament to hard work, resilience, and a passion, an utter passion, I would say, for the game that is unmistakable. And I know this firsthand. As someone who's had the honor of working with Dallas during his playing days, I've witnessed Dallas's incredible growth. Not just as a player, though, that's what's great, but as a leader, as a mentor, and now obviously as an analyst, offering what I would say is a fresh perspective on the sport of baseball from the player's standpoint. So in today's episode, we're going to dive into Dallas's journey from his challenges in high school. This is a guy who did not get any scholarship offers. He had to go to a junior college, and then he went on to Texas Tech before he ultimately became a 24th round pick by the Oakland A's. So keep that in mind. He did not have an easy road. Like a lot of kids, like a lot of parents out there listening, Dallas was not a bonus baby. He was not someone who was ever given an easy path. But as you listen to him, one thing becomes abundantly clear. He has this insatiable desire to prove people wrong. And I would tell you a confidence that you will sense that only comes from putting in the work, not being afraid of it, and really trusting your ability. So for those parents tuning in, this is your chance to hear how you can better support your kid's dream of playing at the highest level, all the while gaining unique insights into the realities of the game of baseball as a business. And then for the players, this episode is a reminder that just because you may not be considered the very best yet, keep putting in the work, keep putting in the time. Believe that if this is really your dream and you really want it, it is possible. So enough of me already. Here's my episode with Dallas Braden. All right, so today we are joined by a friend, a former player in the major leagues, Dallas Braden, and also a former client. So, Dal, thanks for joining us, man.
Matty, great to be back, brother. Great to see you again, dude.
I love it. It's like old times.
That's it, baby. That's it.
Appreciate you coming on. Obviously, and I know we've talked beforehand and just really what this podcast is about. I guess I want to lead this off by saying, is there a moment in time? Obviously, you get called up to the big leagues, and was there a moment in time where you kind of, it hit you like, oh man, like I'm finally in the big leagues? A lot of times guys talk about like when I'm pitching in Dodger Stadium, it was like the first time I felt like I was there. Do you remember a certain moment that struck you where it made you kind of realize it was your dream?
Well, I mean, I think more so what made me realize that I was in the big leagues and, oh damn, is this what the big leagues is like? And I can remember an interaction that I was on the bench for, and it was Joe Blanton was on the mound. Vladimir Guerrero was just out of his mind at the time. It was early in the season, and we just weren't going to be taking any chances with Vlad because, like I said, the dude was on a tear early. 2 outs early in the game, nobody on, and we intentionally walk Vlad. 2 outs, nobody on, early in the game, 0-0, and we intentionally walked Vlad. The man on the mound at the time was Joe Blanton, Big Joe B, world champion Joe Blanton. And Joe B is not afraid of anybody. And when he got the 4 fingers, he looked into the dugout, took off his hat, and just, and you could see things were not right with Joe B. And the next 4 pitches that came out of his hand were 94, 93, 93, 94 on an intentional walk. And he came into the dugout and lost his mind, yelled at the manager, "Are we that afraid? Is this what's going?" And I was like, are you allowed to do this? Like, this
Right.
is the big leagues. Like, are you sure you should be doing this? And it quickly was like, buddy, this is the big leagues. It's about winning, and there is a lot going on here. And that's where I was like, this is not just a game. I knew it wasn't a game by the time I got to junior college. I knew this was turning into a business. That was my first real moment where I was like, this is about dollars, and this is about getting a job done. And there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of ego. There's a lot of competitive juice flowing here at this level. We do not take a single pitch off here, boys.
Do you remember, and I don't know, this could have been like your first day in the big leagues. This could have been your first year. But do you remember like any specific player having a conversation with you, like opening your mind to like some serious advice where you thought, oh shit, I need to listen to this guy because he's trying to help me out for my future?
Dan Herron took me aside very early, because when I first got to the big leagues, the year leading up to me pitching in the big leagues, I had missed all of 2006 with shoulder surgery. 2005, I led the free world in punch outs, big leagues, minor leagues, all up until the day I got shut down in mid-August because I had 140 innings under my belt in my first full season. And Billy shut me down, said, I go home, you've done enough. Had surgery in 06, missed the whole season. In that off season, I go to winter ball, put myself back on the map and put myself back on the fast track. I make 2 starts in the minor leagues in 07. 3 starts in the minor leagues in 07 and then get to the big leagues. And it was because I was punching people out. Well, I got to the big leagues and here I am 4 1/3, knocking on the door of 5 innings, pitch count through the roof, might have 6 punch outs, but I'm doing nothing to help my team. I'm doing nothing to help the bullpen. And Dan Herron took me aside and he said, look, man, you can throw strikes. You're not going to overpower anybody, but you have an idea of how to get outs and how to pitch. You need to quit trying to punch out the world because you are doing yourself 0 favors. You're out of the game by the 5th. The bullpen's getting crushed and you are exposing yourself early in an effort to try to get as many outs as you can early. And the idea is to try to get as many outs as you can over the long haul of your outing. So him taking me aside and I think really relaying the importance of trying to figure out who I was and trying to play to my strengths instead of trying to be somebody I wasn't, that was going to benefit me. Ultimately, it was going to benefit the team, which is going to benefit me. So having that conversation early from a guy who was a strikeout artist, a guy who could get deep into ball games, a guy who every time he took the mound, you felt like you had a great opportunity to win that big league ball game, which is very, very difficult to do. Hearing that from him, I think really came with a lot of weight behind that advice. And so it got me in a mindset that said, I need to figure out who I am, figure out what I do well. And now I can start to shift my focus to understanding who my opponent is and dissecting them because I'm accounted for. Now let me go become the hunter.
Right. And Suzuki was the catcher, I think, when you got called up, wasn't he? Or was it Kendall?
Jason Kendall was the catcher when I was called up. Zook and I had worked our way through the minor league system, step by step with each other. I was about a week ahead of him everywhere we went simply because I was a pitcher and we knew that he was being groomed for the long haul. So he might not be on that fast track per se, but he was absolutely fast tracked. It was just a matter of him getting enough seasoning under his belt. So I was very fortunate to walk into a situation with a super vet in Jason Kendall, who was fully responsible for me getting to the big leagues. And then it was later that year that Suzuki finally came up and, I had an opportunity then to sort of serve as the conduit between the elder veteran pitching staff and the rookie catcher who it's going to be tough coming into that scene, coming into the fold as a rookie catcher. You need some guys to sort of help soften that blow and relay those messages. So that's who I was, with guys like Dan Herron, guys like Justin Duchscher and things that they wanted done and how they wanted them done. And now it's Kurt Suzuki, who's super prospect coming up. He's going to be here and, maybe things aren't jiving well at first. So you got to figure out how to get on the same page. And I sort of was able to serve as that conduit.
Well, so I'm curious too, because obviously you got to the big leagues at 23 years old, right? So you get to the big leagues and you got a guy like Jason Kendall, who's, a veteran at that point, been around a long time. I know Jason, so I know his personality. Are you at all intimidated on the mound, feeling like, I better do what this guy wants me to do? Like, I don't want to look like an idiot. Like what's going through your mind when you're throwing to Jason?
That everything you just said, I don't want to disrespect this dude.
Right.
I watched the preparation. I mean, he's I collected his baseball cards. I know
Yeah.
who this dude is. So now that I'm pitching to him, I'm throwing to him, we're working together. There's a solid chance that if this dude would ask me to turn around and throw the ball over the fence right-handed, because that's going to get the job done, I would have tried to do it. I don't care. I would have just done what he told me to do. But there was a moment, and we had a little bit of an exchange where I shook him off early. And
Hold on. Tell the story. I need to hear this again because I've heard this before.
Well, it was just him telling me, like, you better be fucking sure. Like, if you don't, this isn't a matter of him thinking I didn't believe him. This was him just, I think, emphasizing, buddy, you think so? You think so? Okay, well, you better be right. And what that did for me in that moment was, I think it really hammered home the point of, you got to do your homework. You better be prepared, because he's prepared. And if you're going to suggest something that goes against the hours of preparation that this dude has put in, and it goes against the dirt under his spikes back there, then you better have an answer, and you better have a reason for it. You don't just go up there hoping and praying, chucking and ducking. That's not how we're going to get this done. So he made sure that I understood that very quickly. And then from there, I think I had his respect because I had an answer. I knew what I wanted to do. I want this in off because we're going to double up with the changeup away, and I'm getting a swing out of one of those two pitches.
Right.
So because I had an understanding, he was okay with my approach.
Right. You know, I feel like there's so many countless stories that a lot of these big leaguers talk about where they're like these moments in time that are like these great lessons, right? But I want to go back and I want to kind of remind everybody who may not even know, or just remind them if they do know and forgot. But you were somebody who, like, you weren't really a prospect out of high school. You ended up going to junior college, right? Yes. And I want to talk a little bit about junior college because I feel like it's starting to come back a little bit now. But I think what happens with a lot of kids is they get their heart set on, hey, I got to go to the LSUs and I need to go to the SEC, right? And I think sometimes these players forget the importance of playing. Like, you have to go cut your teeth. You have to go perform. It doesn't do anybody any good to go to a big program, to sit on the bench and not play. You're losing the opportunity to have reps. And then now with the transfer portal, if you go to a place and play, even if it is D1, you could still transfer out even if you start at a small school. So tell me a little bit about, why did you end up at a junior college? Did you have no other option? And then what did junior college do for you?
I had exactly zero options. I had less than zero options. I was basically being funneled and forced to my local junior college, who had so little interest in me at the time. They didn't even come out and ask me to fill out like a player card, nothing.
Was that Delta?
That was Delta. And it was just assumed that if I was going to pursue baseball after high school, that's probably where I would go, simply because of my familial situation. You know, dirt poor, had nothing. If this kid's going to go to school anywhere, he's not moving anywhere. He's going to be going right there. And so it was just assumed that I was going to fall into the lap of Delta College. That did not happen. I was very fortunate that I was drafted by the Atlanta Braves in the 47th round or 46th round, whatever it was at the time when draft and follow phase was still prevalent. And Jay Harris, the scout for the Atlanta Braves, came into my living room and told me straight up, you are not big enough. You're not strong enough. You're not mature enough to do this for a living. And I looked at Jay and I said, Jay, do you have any idea what my situation is like? You're telling me in my living room right now that I could be paid to play baseball. Do you understand that we have no money? What do you think I'm going to say here? And it was his conversation with me that said, you have a chance, but right now, for you to have a chance, this is what needs to be done. This is how you should approach this. This is what you should think about. Giving yourself an opportunity to get bigger, to get stronger, to get more mature, because you're not going to be able to handle this life if you take off right now. So I took that advice, went up north on the I-5 to Kevin Higgins at American River Junior College with my grandmother. She walked in and said, I got a boy who needs to play baseball. He pitches. Well, ma'am, I think we've got our roster spoken for. She said, he's left-handed and he was drafted by the Braves. And they said, left-handed, drafted. Did you bring your glove? I said, I did. Can you throw a bullpen? I absolutely can. So I threw a bullpen and I told him, I'm not just a pitcher. I can hit too. And I want to do that. Well, we'll see about that. Round of BP, I started in right field and I pitched on Saturday because Manny Parra, the left-hander, blow a 98, who was drafted by the Milwaukee Brewers, was the guy pitching in front of me. So that's the situation I walked into. And I'm here to tell you right now, Junior college is often looked at as a stepping stone. And I am here to tell you that junior college can be a launching pad for your career, not a stepping stone, a launching pad. And it simply boils down to what you are willing to invest and put into your situation, whether it's D1, whether it's NAIA, a JUCO, on a stop in between, one of the two. It's all about what you're investing in the moment, because you can't put forth nothing and expect everything. That is absolute insanity. Junior college provides you an opportunity to realize where you're at, where you're going, what needs to be done, and what you haven't done. It'll put all of that in perspective right now.
All right, so here's what's funny, man, and I'm going back in time and remembering how it was an honor to represent you, because so many guys that agents in general come across are guys that are, everything needs to be perfect, right? You know, they have to be told when everything needs to happen. They have to have the perfect opportunity. If they have the perfect opportunity, things will develop. And you are reminding me the importance of, like, I interviewed Jonathan Mayo on the podcast, and he talked about the want to. He wrote a book basically about, like, look at Albert Pujols, Jacob deGrom, Charlie Blackmon, Joey Votto, like all of these guys. If you talk to scouts out of high school, they'd be like, not a superstar, not going to make it, but they all possessed a quality that he described as like the want to. And what I'm hearing you talk about right now, and just your passion, that's what that is for me. It's this desire and this insatiable hunger to show everybody, and really to prove everybody wrong, that you're going to make it. There's no one's going to stop you. And that is the one thing that I think sometimes players lose sight of, the importance of it.
Well, this is a game that is built upon failure. From that perspective, if you're somebody who is chasing this life or has adopted this life, then I think it would really benefit you to take the perspective that every day life is waiting to tell you how prepared you are not. Life is waiting to tell you how much you need to do. And the game of baseball tells us that as well. You wake up readily accepting the fact that you're going to fail. But if you can already accept that, then you've already put yourself that much further ahead of the competition, because you've accepted the failure that's inevitable, but you are now far more enamored and entrenched in the process to combat the failure and to limit the failure. Because again, we know what's going to happen. 3 for 10 gets you to the hall. We've heard that since we were little leaguers. So we're trying to figure out a way to keep it at that 3 for 10 or 2.5 for 10. We don't want 2 for 10. So we've got to buy into the fact that we're going to fail. But now buying into that allows us to compartmentalize the failure and pursue success. That's so important.
Do you think, in a sense, like, you had to deal with so much shit growing up that, like, failure on a baseball field?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. That's I always said, like, if you're telling me that 30,000 people that don't know me, that have no idea who I am, screaming at me and telling me if you think that's going to affect me, you don't know me at all. And that's what I think a lot of players, athletes in general, go through, because when you commit to the path that you're on, people already start to look at you like you're a little crazy. Well, you got a 9-year-old going to gymnastics for 3 hours a day, 4 days a week. Yeah. You want to know what they're called in about 10 years? They're called Olympians. That's what they're called. I'm not asking you to understand it. I'm not asking you to be okay with it. I'm just letting you know that this is what's necessary to get to this point. And if you're willing to adopt that and you're willing to commit to that, now we can talk. Now we can have conversations about where we're headed. But if I think a lot of people get baffled by the idea of people wanting to pursue something that is so filled with the inevitable failure that they can't figure out a way to put themselves in a position to continue the pursuit, because they continue to get beat down, and eventually they just take no for an answer. And that just can't be in your vocabulary.
Yeah, I agree with that. So you end up, how long did you stay at American River? Did you stay there for 2 years?
I was at American River for 2 years, and then
Texas Tech.
Texas Tech for a year. Because after my freshman year at American River, I was an All-American, and they come out and you play the freshman All-American Fall Star Classic your sophomore year, and that's where teams come out, and I performed well. Tech saw me, told them, "Look, dude, I'm not D1 eligible," And that's the ultimate goal, is for me to get my stuff together so I can be academically eligible to compete at the highest level possible. And they said, if you can do that, we're committing to you. Make the commitment to us. Get eligible and we'll be here. And so that was how the relationship started. I handled business. My grandma kept her foot squarely up my backside, and I got to Texas Tech.
So were you considering any other schools, or was it like when you heard Tech was interested, that was the place you wanted to go?
I mean, I went up and saw the legendary Lindsey Meggs at Chico State. I had gone out to ACU, Abilene Christian, just doing the diligence, whether I was going to be eligible to go to a Division II school. Is this an NAIA route that I'm going to take? Like, do I take the peanuts that could be offered after my second year in junior college? Like, what am I doing? And I just knew, again, with the progress I had seen from my senior year in high school to freshman year in junior college, what I was already experiencing from my freshman year in junior college to my sophomore year, I could feel myself physically growing. I was being taught lessons of accountability on a level that I had never been introduced to. And I knew then, I said, I know who I am. I can bet on myself. That's a done deal. Now it's just about continuing to put myself in a position to take advantage of the opportunities that I'm creating for myself.
So are you looking at these programs, whichever program you were thinking about at the time? I mean, because I know your dream was, hey, my goal is to be in the big leagues. Like, that is what I'm shooting for, right? We're not trying to get to the College World Series, although I'm sure that would have been nice.
Sure.
So when you eventually landed on Tech, did you believe this was the place that had they were going to get the most out of me?
Yes. And because of the conversations I was having with the coaching staff, and Emo is his name, he was at Texas Tech at the time. And funny story, I was in Hornell, New York, playing summer ball for the Hornell Dodgers. Shout out Hornell. And I'm walking up a creek in the middle of the morning because I was just out in nature, and my phone rings, and it's the coach from Texas Tech. And when I tell you I had just signed and sent the letter of intent, I mean the day before, I had signed and sent my letter of intent. Done deal. And the coach calls me, hey, I'm headed to OSU and you're coming with me. I'm headed to Okie State and you're coming with me. And I was like, how's that happen? No, you didn't sign. Yeah. I just signed it's a done deal. No. Yeah, man, I'm going to Tech. So that was it. And because, and you know how I ride.
Yeah.
And so that was it. I said, I made the commitment here. This is where I'm going, man. And when I got there, it really became something that I was excited about for this simple reason. I think an athlete at a certain point in time in your career or your athletic career, whatever it is, you're met with a moment where you can either join forces with and become part of this great story that's continued to be told, or you might have a chance to be a part of something that disrupts all of that. You might be able to be a part of something that allows this new entity to grow and burst onto the scene. So do I want to go to the College World Series wearing a Longhorn jersey? Or do I want to be the reason that it's horns down at Dan Law Field when they come trying to mess with the Red Raiders? I want to be that. I want to be a part of something. I don't want to join something. I want to help grow something. I want to build something. And everything that I was hearing and everything that I was experiencing was providing that opportunity. Because I knew I was going there and they said, look, we want you to compete for the Friday night spot. This is who we've got ahead of you. This is what we think can work out. What do you want to do? And I said, well, Friday night's mine. You go ahead and book that. You show me what else I got to do.
All right. So here's what's funny. Cause a lot of these people that listen to this podcast, they know, all right, they're getting scouted. They're meeting with scouts in the fall. And this is the reason why scouts love in-home visits. It's because if I am recruiting or if I'm scouting Dallas Braden and I get to have a conversation with this guy, I am now learning a whole different thing that I never would have seen this coming. Even if you watch you on the mound, like it's an intensity, but being able to sit and talk to you and hear it from you, it's like, oh, now I know what I'm getting. So that's where a lot of these families need to realize, like, this is why a lot of these scouts find an interest in actually sitting down and having these one-on-one conversations.
And some advice to the parents. I don't know how many parents might take wind of this, but when you're at the game, you understand that your child is an extension / representation of you. Well, in that moment, the roles are reversed. You are an extension and you are a representation of your athlete. And when something doesn't go well for your athlete or for your athlete's team, and you are vocal or you are boisterous, do you understand that the people that are looking at your child now have an example to look at that they might be judging and saying, so when stuff hits the fan, is this the reaction that I can expect? When things aren't going well, is this the reaction that I can expect? Because there's a good chance that this has happened at home before. And now I have to wonder how this athlete processes that sort of reaction at home. And it could be a benefit. It could mean that there's a lot of support here and there's attention and people are around this individual. Or it could mean this individual goes home and doesn't really take accountability. It could mean this individual goes home and on the ride home plays the blame game, right? It's the coach who didn't do this. It's the teammates who didn't do this. That's why our guy wasn't able to do this. And everything that you're saying or doing and sometimes not saying while watching your athlete, scouts are watching. They're scouting your child and they're scouting you just as much. Because if I can't talk to the kid, then what's the next best place for me to extract information from? The example that this child has grown up with each and every day, and that's the parents.
Yeah, that's great advice. I'm certainly going to share that with everybody because I think that's something that a lot of parents obviously need to hear. They lose sight of. They're emotional in the moment. They don't even realize the effect it's having on the kids. So that's certainly one of the profound things I think that's probably been said on this podcast. I want to talk about the draft. So you go to Texas Tech, you end up getting drafted. At the time, I wasn't representing you yet. So did you have an agent? And how was that process like? Because I want to shed light for some of these families. Like, what is it to have good representation? What is it maybe not to have good representation? And what's the difference?
And all of that is going to be impacted by your prospect status. Simply put, if you are somebody who is on the national radar in terms of scouting, then there's a solid chance that you have been contacted by multiple groups of representation who are telling you how they can help you get to the next level. First and foremost, no agent is getting you to the big leagues. We can start there. No agent is getting you to the big leagues. There are agencies and groups of representation that have resources that can absolutely help your process. There's no question about that. But in terms of your productivity, that's where it starts and ends. Getting to the big leagues based on the outs you're getting or the knocks you're getting. From there, for me, I was not on the prospect list. I did not have agents calling me, seeking my services. I had a former player at Texas Tech who would come back in the offseason to work out, who saw me, called his agent, said, hey, this kid's getting drafted. It's just a matter of when. He's got nobody to represent him. He has no idea what's going on. You should call this guy. So about 3 days before the draft, I get a phone call kind of outlining how things could potentially go and what's going to go on and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, sweet. Okay. So yeah, you're the dude. Right on. Let's go. And the draft happens and I'm fielding phone calls and I'm in contact with this individual, with my agent at the time. And, I was drafted in the 26th round or whatever, 24th round. I don't know.
It was the 24th round. Yeah.
Yeah. 24th round. And I mean, it very well could have been sooner, but I kept telling the guys every time they'd call, oh, sorry, we were looking at you in the 11th, but looks like we're moving up. Yeah, no problem, man. All good. Call me when, dude, I got stuff to do. Call me when I've been drafted. I don't know how this works. So I eventually get a phone call. And what I find out is the agent, I got a call from the scout initially. And he says, look, the guy representing you right now is sort of pushing. And I don't know that you understand this, but you're really not in a position to be making demands or asking for. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? I'm not asking for anything. I want to go play. Send me the check. I'll go. And he was like, well, I'm just going to tell you, you've successfully negotiated yourself out of about $5,000 here with this. So the next phone call you get, let's just say yes. And I was like, dude, I'm telling you yes right now. Let's go. So that was a done deal. Signed, on my way. I mean, I got signed. Matt, I didn't have a driver's license. I didn't have an ATM card. I didn't have anything. The scout had to come to Texas and drive me to the Texas Department of Transportation at like 5 a.m. to get a expedited ID card because I was going to go to Canada. They're like, you don't have anything proving who you are. We need something to put you on an airplane. So I was like, well, what do we do? So I had to go get an ATM card. I had to go get a driver's license. I mean, I'm 19 years old, 20, and I had no clue what was going on in life.
Hold on. So, okay. So you start out, this is everyone listening to, this was a different time in the game, right? Like this is when they had short season baseball, which they don't have anymore. This is when there were, like 50 rounds in the draft, which there obviously aren't anymore. So we were in a different time. But so tell us a little bit about so then what happens? You end up going to Canada, obviously. So you go to short season.
Yes, I go to short season, and that's where you're dropped into a world of, I mean, there were, I had 18-year-old Dominican kids. I had a 25-year-old Dominican guy, guys from all over the country, all over the world. And now you're a pro. And there's nobody there to tell you how it's going to go. You're just going to get the lowdown from your teammates, guys who have been around for a couple years, maybe. Like I said, they've got some experience, and you're just watching, and you're doing what you're told. You're getting in the mix. And, I would equate it sort of like to boot camp. You get off the bus, there's whistles blowing, you're getting yelled at, get in line, do your jumping jacks, do your push-ups, and shut your mouth. And that's essentially what the experience was like early. And it became abundantly clear that this is a dog-eat-dog world. Mm-hmm. Even in this clubhouse right now, you might have guys that you get along with, and you have guys that you'll develop friendships with. But behind closed doors, if they can figure out a way to bite your arm off and not be held responsible for it, they'll do it. And you need to know that. Like, that's what that environment is like. So you are being introduced to this game and this business of this game on a completely different level than you've ever been aware of.
Do you think that ultimately made you a better player in the long term?
I think kind of like we talked about earlier, just facing some of the trials and tribulations and forced with, some of the hurdles I had to clear earlier in life probably prepared me for that, because the idea of, look, I was in another country with no relatives, no anything. My grandma's the only one I got. And, I had been traveling and on my own for a while anyway. So being on my own and dealing with a foreign situation was not foreign to me at all. It was just another day. So baseball was the sanctuary. You put me on a baseball field on Mars and I'm going to be comfortable. I don't care where it's at. Just put me on a field. So that's where I was able to block things out as, okay, I'm home now. I'm on a field. Because back to betting on myself, I know what I'm capable of, and I know what I'm willing to do. I know what I'm willing to sacrifice, which is far more than anybody on that other side of the field, and it's far more than anybody in my dugout too. And now it's just time to go. It's time to eat.
So you start out, obviously, you're not not a top prospect, didn't sign for a lot of money. You're clearly the underdog.
Yep.
Right. I imagine on some level you're surrounded by not everybody, but a handful of guys that are prospects.
Every one of them.
So at what point did you start to feel like, oh man, I can do that. Like, I'm better than these guys?
Matty, the minute that I started to punch people out when I was getting a paycheck for it, because the first thing I told myself, and this is the first thing I when it comes to like psyching yourself up and putting yourself in a mental mode to go and attack, what I did was I took how much money that I was given to come play this game, and then I compared that to how much money all these other dudes were given. And I said, they're paying me money to go and get these dudes out. And you know how much they're paying those guys to get on base? And I'm the one preventing that. I am going to take so much joy in every bit of this, because you had prospect status written all over you. You went to the big D1. You went to the national championship. You got your 7-figure signing bonus. You got your baseball card deal with Topps, blah, blah, blah. I had to watch all these prospects have all of this stuff handed to them because of what they did at the amateur level. And I said to myself, well, right now, boys, we're in the pros. And none of that mean nothing. Everything that matters right now is what we're going to do today. And today, I just punched your ticket. And tomorrow, I'm going to punch it again. And when I do that, you want to know what I'm doing? I'm punching my ticket to the big leagues. And that's the mentality I took, was the bigger the signing bonus, the further I'm going to shove this up. The furthest I'm trying to keep it clean.
Yeah.
It's going to go all the way up there. The more money you got, the farther it's going.
Yeah.
That's the mentality that I took.
And so you start to obviously hone your craft, right? Do you remember, was there a point in time where were you taught, you were somebody that I used to always talk to about this, like, hey, you had like multiple change-ups, right? Like different speeds, different variations. Was there something that you were taught, whether it was mechanically, grip-wise, pitch-wise, that you feel like it shifted for you? It shifted like your ability to get guys out or to keep them off balance or...
There's one little, this is one of the greatest like full circle moments I had ever had in my baseball life, in life period. I was like 16 watching ESPN one day. I saw a video with Jamie Moyer, and he was talking about not driving off the back foot when throwing his changeup and how you were able to replicate arm speed, but you were just not creating the same force behind any other offering. And so I went out and I probably threw 200 fucking balls against the wall, Matt, and was trying to like get a feel for what it would do to like deaden my backside. And again, I was 16. I'd only played 2 years of high school baseball. I was going into my senior year and was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try this. And my changeup was disgusting, absolutely disgusting. And then I got to junior college and figured out a screwball and just implemented the screwball, but with the same theory of deadening my backside on certain pitches. So now by the time I get through my senior year, I have what I would consider an elevated understanding of changing speeds and how to make the same pitch do different things. And so that is what separated me, I think, from my counterparts early. And I think my ability or my desire to just continue to hammer that. You know, I was a guy who you were getting 10, 12 minimum worth of separation from the fastball and changeup. And with today's information out there, I undoubtedly was going to be able to make this thing move a little bit more this way, a little bit more this way with the resources we have now. I was just doing that without the technology. So I think that was probably the biggest thing that allowed me to take my game to the next level early, was that little bit of information I got from that video with Jamie Moyer. Fast forward 15 years to an Oakland A's fantasy camp where he was our guest speaker. Jamie and I ended up getting sort of not yelled at, but like talking to like, hey, you guys are supposed to be coaches and working this whole camp here. And Dallas, you've had him cornered over here on the backfield for 40 minutes talking about a changeup. You're never going to throw again, dude. What are you doing? Oh, I'm trying to learn. It's Jamie. But it was just an incredible exchange back and forth.
All right. So then as you progress through the minor leagues, man, at what point did you start feeling like, oh, now they're showing me love? Now they're starting to show me some respect. I'm actually a prospect now. When did that happen for you?
Well, like I said, 2005 is I started the season off really strong. I think from A ball to double A, I won my first 14 or 15 decisions in a row. Like not a no decision. It was W's all day. And again, I was having good success with swing and miss. So that was when I had the brass actually come out, the brass being the front office, the executives for the Oakland A's. They came out to a start in Frisco, Texas. And it was really brutal because that day, the the tanks, the sump tanks underneath the clubhouse, all the sewage and everything had broke, and sewage was bubbling up in our clubhouse through the drains. Somebody came in to clean this with like ammonia and bleach, and they mixed that together. That's called a bomb. Matt, that's called a bomb when you put those chemicals together. So I actually I passed out in the clubhouse, massive headache, and didn't start. And the brass was like, what's going on? Push back, threw a bullpen, arm didn't feel great. And that's when Billy shut me down. It was like, look, dude, 140 innings. It's August, go home. So I was knocking on the door of the big leagues in 2005 because Zito had just gone down on the injured list for the first time in his career. And they were looking for someone to throw up there. So it was either going to be, I think, Ramon Hernandez or myself. And I didn't make the start. So they're like, see ya.
All right. So you get called up to the big leagues. Obviously, that was an amazing moment. I guess I want to fast forward now to your perfect game. Okay. And I'm sure you've talked about this a ton. Help everybody understand why that game was so special. You talked a lot about your grandma. So
Yeah.
why? I mean, obviously, you threw a perfect game just for the listener on Mother's Day
Yeah.
in 2010, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2010.
Yeah. And with my family history, my mom and my grandmother raised me. And with that being the case, having lost my mom my senior year in high school, obviously life was going to be really tough. I told you you know this, I played 2 years of high school baseball, and losing here my senior year, you know, I was sort of met with that challenge. I just watched the Jamie Moyer video the year before, but I didn't play baseball that year. But I was trying to figure myself out, and having my mom make all the sacrifices that she did just to put me in a spot to be able to go to school in a somewhat safe neighborhood and there was a lot that she had committed to me just being able to live my life. And baseball was our thing. It was the one thing that we committed to unequivocally. She got me up in the morning to go play baseball on the weekends. It wasn't me begging her. It was her getting my little ass up. And so when you have that, it's really tough to ignore that type of commitment that's been made. So the sacrifices leading up to me just making it out of Stockton all had to do with the commitment and sacrifices that she had made to me. So on Mother's Day, a very bad day in my life up until that day, that one Mother's Day, I said that having the success on that day that my team and I were able to have, it was the baseball gods giving Mother's Day back to me and my grandma, allowing us to, because it really was. It was a 364-day calendar for me up until that day, because Mother's Day was just not a day that I was going to pay attention to. And it sucks because my grandmother deserves, I don't have enough words. We don't have enough time with what that woman has gone through and what she's done. And for us to really not even be able to celebrate her on that day was terrible. But, some good things happened 27 outs later, and we're able to really to reflect on that day. And it's been very special.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching that game. For anybody who hasn't seen it, like, go back and watch. To throw a perfect game on Mother's Day, and then obviously she was at the game, and you embraced her afterwards. Like, it was such an emotional. Someone could not even know you and be like, "Oh man, that, like, what an incredible story." So I think it's so fascinating as I think about all the things that you just kind of described about your career to come to this moment where you throw a perfect game on Mother's Day. Like, just absolutely incredible.
That stuff's reserved for the legends, man.
Yeah, no question. Now, as we already talked about, like, your life wasn't without struggle, right? As your career continued to progress, you dealt with some injury to the point, like, hey, it pretty much sent you out of the game. I remember specifically, the thing with your foot, that was obviously wild, but obviously, I think kind of the death now was the shoulder, right?
Yeah.
How did you deal with that emotionally at that time?
It was really tough for obvious reasons, because everything that you've been working for is now changing, and it's not being taken away from you because nobody made that decision. This is just how things have gone. This is your lot in life. And I knew I had to make a decision very quickly. I could be frustrated, pissed off, and angry that things were not continuing to go the way that I wanted them to. Because I think statistically, if you look at the numbers and what I know about myself, I was just starting to get it. And what I mean by just starting to get it, I was starting to get it on a different level. I knew how to get outs. I knew I could compete. I knew I belonged in the big leagues. I had established that. That wasn't a question. It was now I was going to start demanding things and expecting things of myself that was probably going to get me laughed at if I were to say them out loud. And I didn't give a shit. I'll tell you, I'm coming with a sub-2 ERA next year. Those were the goals. 20 wins. Well, why are these things not possible? I just wrote all these goals down for last year and hit every single one of them. Check mark. Why can't I do that again? But I knew that what I was feeling in my arm, I knew I was done. I knew it was toast, and I had a choice. I could be angry, or I could be appreciative of everything that I have, everything that this game has given me. My arm falling off is something that I can't do much about. I mean, that's my anatomy. It is what it is. I did everything that I could medicinally to try to patch myself back together.
Yeah.
you were there for me. I did everything, man. And when you just can't answer the bell, you have to be honest with yourself. And so that was something that I was able to do early. And I knew that I was able to take care of my grandmother and put her in a position where she didn't have to worry about much in life. That's all I ever really wanted to do, was to take care of her and pay her back for everything she had given me. So having been able to do that, what was I going to be angry about? The game of baseball had given me such a beautiful opportunity to live out a dream. And I want to feel, and I go to bed at night feeling like I gave the game as a player all the respect that it deserves. And I gave it everything that I could possibly have given it. And if paying me back is allowing me to be a part of the game and to be around the game in the capacity that I still am, how could I wake up and be angry? How can I wake up with an attitude? This is the most beautiful game on the planet. And it's allowing me still an opportunity to be a part of it and to share my love with it. And I don't know how you wake up pissed off about that.
Well, look, I mean, the game is still giving you something, right? And you're giving the game something still, you know, with what you get to do, talking about baseball, being around the game still. So I think it's kind of this natural relationship that you have with the game still. So for those who don't know, you have a couple nephews who are currently in, correct me if I'm wrong, travel baseball, youth baseball. They're obviously, how old are they?
Well, they have graduated from that and are now both attending college. And so that has been a journey for sure, because, you know, as the uncle, I'm removed from the everyday. I'm not at every game when it comes to that stuff. You know, I'm watching video, I'm on the Game Changer and I'm getting videos and, you know, we're doing our stuff like that. But I watched very closely from the time that they were, you know, 10U, 11U, 12U, and now it starts, right? And it's every weekend. And so, yes, I've had a front row seat to watch how that has all unfolded, and albeit differently, but I've got a very good idea of what comes along with the demand of travel ball. And I think how parents are navigating that, how I think they can navigate it a little more efficiently, that would be more productive for them and for their athlete. So it's been eye-opening to watch.
Well, so let's talk about that. Like, what are some of the things that you would change about how parents manage their kids' travel ball schedule, life?
I think it's understanding, number one, what your expectations are and being able to manage your expectation as a parent. And let's start broadly. Do you expect them to be a Major League Baseball player? Because if that's the case, we're having a very different conversation already, because your expectations are unrealistic. They're just simply unrealistic. The math tells you that your expectation is unrealistic. So I would think about the development of your player and what is best for the development of your player. And we know what practice is and we know what games are. Allen Iverson did a great job of differentiating the two.
Right.
So, Matt, if you're a shortstop and you think you're a really good shortstop and you're going to go play this tournament over the weekend, you're going to play 2 games each day. So we've got 4 games on Saturday, maybe 3 on Sunday if you're going to the championship game. My guess is you're probably, if you play all 5 games at shortstop over that weekend, I don't know, how many ground balls you gonna take? How many outs you gonna make? 20?
Right.
So you got 20 ground balls over the course of 5 games. You executed your fundamentals about 20 times. Now we can factor in your infield, outfield practice and all that. Fantastic. So what do you want to do? You want to run it up to 60? So you've taken 60 ground balls over a 5-game weekend? What'd that do for you? Now I think about a weekend spent where you're taking 100 ground balls, taking 10 minutes, 15 minutes, talking about it. You go back out there, take another 50. But these are to the backhand side. Come in, we'll talk about it. Take another 50. These are going to be to the forehand side. So we've taken about 200 ground balls in about 2.5, 3 hours. We've had some great conversations about the mechanics surrounding our approach on all of the mechanics. I feel like we're probably going to get a little more out of that.
Right.
I feel like there's probably room to grow there. And that is pointed at the people who, if you think your child is going to be this blue chip athlete, I would really want to focus on and hammer home the fundamentals and the details. And that's where I think travel ball takes advantage of, because let's understand, it's a money-making endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
And what we see in travel ball is what we know about the minor leagues, Matt, is every minor league team has what? 3, maybe 4 guys that they're in love with. Everybody else is on that roster to do what? To fill it out so those guys can play the game. Yeah. It's that simple. So if you're the kid on the travel ball team who's gotten his 2 innings each game, has gotten 3 at-bats over the weekend, I hate to say it to you like this, but you are there and you are paying for the other kids to be able to play that game. And so now I would ask, is your money being spent wisely? Is your time being spent wisely? Are you getting out of this what you hope to get out of it? And does that match up with your expectation, which is the first thing we talked about?
Totally. No, and I've said that to parents often, where it's like, if you want to choose to spend the money, that's on you. But you should at least have the information in order to analyze it the proper way. You know, and I love how you led this off. Like, let's talk about, what are your goals? What's your expectation of your son? Because so many of these parents, I think, rightly or wrongly, may not even be honest with themselves about that. They may hope, I hope my son's a major league player. I'm treating him like he's going to be a major league player, but I haven't acknowledged it with myself that that's what my expectation is.
And Matt, think about this. For the first time in a long time, first time ever in our society, really, since the introduction of the NIL, we have watched parents start to prioritize Division I athletic scholarships as a very real means to an end to their future. And that's not reality. That is just simply not reality. Families don't get to wake up and go, all right, school's tough and we don't have a ton of money. You got to be a D1 swimmer. So let's go do it. All right. Like, you just don't. That's not a luxury that people are afforded. But now, so more than ever, parents are correlating money that they spend in travel ball and these travel youth programs with Division I scholarship success. That's not how this works. If you pay $5,000 every summer until your child hits their senior year, the end of the rainbow is not a Division I scholarship. That's not how it works. But more so now than ever, parents are utilizing it that way. They're looking at it this way. And that's why you see kids, I think, get burned out at a certain point, because the expectation of the parent far exceeds the desire of the child. And it probably exceeds the expectation of the child himself. So now you have a parent going, I'm spending all this money and you don't care to want to go. And it's like, dude, you're right. I'm 11. I don't understand your $1,500 investment into the batting cage. I want to go. Do you understand that they just dropped the OG Fortnite map? I want to go do that with the boys. I don't want to go hit for 3 hours, but I spent the disconnect, interest level down, frustration. And it's cyclical.
You know, it really is a great point. I mean, I'm thinking in my mind, like, countless conversations I've had with kids, and to have a conversation with a parent, let's just say, with the kid present, you know, and when the mom and dad is there and they're talking to like an advisor, right? I'm smart enough to know, well, that kid is probably not being himself in this moment. He's a little, you know, intimidated, unsure of what he can say. And he's hearing his mom and dad talk about how, oh no, like, my son has the dream and the ambition to be a major league player, right? And I'm looking at the kid and I'm like, man, I don't know. He hasn't even spoken for himself yet, right? And so it's, you know, as I think about like, what is the answer to all of this? I think it starts with just an awareness, and that's why I love we're having this conversation, because it really needs to just be talked about more.
Well, no, it's not. It's the problem. I think it's the process too, because we've all identified the problem to some degree. And we all have our different issues with the problem on varying levels. I think, what is the solution? And the solution is ultimately parents being honest with themselves and having a true understanding of what the desire of the child is. Because there's a big difference between forcing your child in a direction and then presenting your child with options and exposing them to things. Like, I'll take my children, for example. My children do not play baseball. They do not play softball. You want to know what we do? We play catch. They hit off the tee almost every day, but that's only because they want to. And that's because they asked to. I push them in the direction. I bought a tee. I bought balls. I bought a bat. We now have fun doing what we do. I don't force that on them. Not at all. I wait for them. And I put them in soccer. They had a great time, enjoyed it. I asked them, did they want to do it again? All good. Okay. What else do you want to do? I want to do jujitsu. I want to do gymnastics. Okay, good. I mean, they've been doing jujitsu since they were 2.5, 3 years old. They're 7 and 5 now. So they found their lanes early. This is what they want to do. That could change next year. Next year, they could want to play softball. Next year, they could want to get back on the soccer pitch, And it's just, I think it's my job. It's our job as parents to provide them the opportunities to do so. But your job is to be a voyeur, is to watch, to absorb what they're absorbing, watch what they're absorbing and how they're absorbing it. And that's where you're going to find your lane as a parent. And it's going to tell you how much you need to support them or how much you need to push them, how you need to do so. That's what I'm learning. And that's what I try to pay attention to.
All right. So as we wrap up here, I got one last question that I want to ask you, and I want to go back to the big leagues real fast. So you obviously watch a lot of big league baseball games. You played in the big leagues. You talk to a lot of these players. Because you were a pitcher, I want to ask you specifically about a pitcher. For these younger kids, who is a pitcher that you think plays this game the right way that should be somebody that these younger players really watch and try to learn from?
Oh, man. I think there's a lot of good examples. What I don't want to do is just throw a guy out there who has incredible stuff, because I think what will get lost in how they go about their business is the stuff. And I'm going to use a guy like Max Scherzer as an example because of what I know about Max and his preparation. And this is a guy who, and we started this conversation off about what I learned about the big leagues and what was the aha, and it's that we don't take a pitch off, not a single pitch. And that means not a pitch or a throw. So as a pitcher, every time you touch a baseball is an opportunity to learn something, is an opportunity to gather some sort of information about what is going on right now. We only have so many bullets we get to shoot. You better take track of what they're doing every time you fire one. Max Scherzer embodies that. Every bullpen, every pitch is accounted for. Every pitch has a purpose. There is a reasoning behind why we're doing what we're doing. And if you can force yourself into a mindset where you absolutely have to execute, it's not a matter of I have to, I think you start to hit a level of demand in oneself that can start to separate you from your competition. Because if you're okay with 8 out of 10, outstanding. That's a pretty good job. You want to know what it is? It's 8 out of 10. You want to know what it's not? It's not 9 out of 10. And there's somebody out there demanding that. Max Scherzer is that guy. And so I would say demanding the absolute very best out of yourself every time you step on the baseball field or put a ball in your hand needs to be the mentality. Max Scherzer embodies that. I was going to use Jacob deGrom as an example as well, simply because of the hurdles he faces with injury. It seems like year in and year out, what his stuff looks like. Think about the mentality you have to be able to go back to the drawing board, seemingly year in and year out, dealing with what he's dealing with, knowing how good he is if he's healthy. It's the best arm talent on the planet when he's healthy.
Did you know he was a shortstop in college?
Sure did. Stetson.
Crazy.
I mean, it's speaking of that, this is a guy, Lucas Erceg. You might be going, who the hell is Lucas Erceg? Well, I'm glad you asked. Lucas Erceg is a guy that was plucked from the Oakland A's bullpen that was shoving it up everybody else's rear this season and planted right into the back end of a postseason bound Kansas City Royals team who took over the closing role. That guy was a high round draft pick as a shortstop for the Milwaukee Brewers, faced many hurdles in his personal life and said, I know how good I am. I know what I'm capable of. I don't need to hit the baseball. Instead, I'll throw 99 to 100 mile an hour sinkers and start punching these people out. So back to the mentality switch, Matty. This is a dude who's saying to himself, you paid me to hit and field this game, and now you're paying me to shove it up the guys who are getting paid to hit and field this game. Very different.
Love it. Well, brother, not to hate on any of my prior guests, I feel like this might have been the best episode I've done so far, man.
Yeah.
I got to tell you.
Yeah. Let's go.
No, but buddy, I appreciate it. It means the world to me. And you obviously have a whole wealth of insight that I think a lot of these families and these players can learn from. So thank you. It means the world.
Anytime, Matty. Thanks for having me. Good to see you again, brother.
Likewise, brother.